The keyboard that sits on my desk and that I've used for quite a while now as my daily driver is the Corsair K70 Lux RGB. Ever since it came in for review, it's been my go-to, and no matter how many units temporarily replace it for testing and review purposes, I always end up going back. However, as someone who spends 10 plus hours a day sitting in front of a computer screen, hammering away at a keyboard for one reason or another, I tend to eat multiple meals at my desk. And this inevitably leads to crumbs, dust, and sometimes even some water or coffee getting on the keyboard. Lettuce, soup, cheese, sauce, frozen pizza. One time there was an entire rack of lamb. Meet the K68 RGB, Corsair's answer to sloppy people like me. The K68 has been out for a little while, but like all things in today's market, it requires an RGB infusion at some point in its life cycle to make it a little more appealing. The first thing I want to get out of the way here is that this isn't nearly as expensive of a product as the big brother K70 Lux. The Lux goes for about $170, while the existing K68 is only $100, and this RGBified version will only run you maybe $15 or $20 more. So while not quite falling into the budget category of mechanical keyboards, the K68 definitely comes in at a reasonable price while packing in a good amount of features. For starters, Corsair didn't skimp out on the switches, as you get genuine Cherry MX Reds here. As I always do, I put the K68 through a fairly rigorous typing test to see how it compares to what I'm used to, and I'm happy to say that the experience is good to very good. However, you do get a small amount more resistance in your keystrokes than with a standard Cherry Red switch, and that's due to the fact that the K68 is IP32 rated for dust and spills. In order to achieve this, Corsair surrounded each switch with this thin rubber membrane. While actuation force and distance of the actual switches remains the same, each keystroke must now also take into account that there might be a small amount of friction between the keycap and the rubber. Now, while the design of the keycap and shape of the membrane suggest that ideally there would be no interference between the two, real-world typing includes not only straight vertical actuation of the key, but also some incidental lateral motion that inevitably leads to contact and thus a need for a slightly harder press. I compared my K70, a Corsair Strafe, and the K68 all side by side as they all have Cherry Reds, and the K70 and Strafe felt almost identical while the K68 was slightly different. I still actually enjoy the typing experience, and I prefer the linear actuation as opposed to the severe clickiness of blue switches, but just be aware that typing on the K68 is just a little bit different. So while we're on the subject of the key design and the rubber membrane, let's talk about what IP32 actually means. The IP rating of an object contains two numbers, the first of which is a rating against ingress of solids, and the second number a rating against ingress of liquids. Here are two charts that may be helpful to figure out what exactly you're supposed to be protected from if you have an IP rated device. The K68 has a solid rating of 3, meaning that items greater than 2.5 millimeters shouldn't be able to get inside the body of the keyboard and rattle around for eternity. The liquid rating of 2 may not sound great, but this means that water that drips onto the keyboard from a vertical position won't cause anything to explode, and you can have the keyboard tilted at up to 15 degrees before you have to worry about liquids getting up and under the keycaps and damaging anything. To translate, if you spill high C on your keyboard, don't panic, remove the keycaps, and dry with a paper towel. Other features of the K68 include dedicated media keys with a row of separate volume buttons up top. This is a little different from the volume roller on the K70, but anytime a keyboard has its own volume buttons without having to hold down a function key, I do a little happy dance. You also get a Windows lock key and a brightness adjustment button with 3 levels of lighting. The rest of the layout is pretty standard, and you get a number pad, which I always find useful. The lighting is per key and individually addressable through Corsair's Q software, which hopefully we'll see merge with Corsair Link sometime this year to create one unified Corsair control suite. The lighting looks good enough, although having to shine through the rubber membrane does make it just slightly less bright than the K70. One thing missing back here is a USB pass-through, although this does mean that we don't have to mess with a comically thick cable with two USB connections on it. The K68 comes with a textured plastic wrist rest, which I found to be quite comfortable actually, but just be a little cautious when snapping it into place. I have in the past broken off these little tabs when inserting them into the grooves, and then you have a wrist rest which just kind of flops around. But enough small talk, I know why you guys are actually here, to see if we can nuke this thing with a spill test. Well, let's give it a try and then come back here and see if she still works. So that's a wrap on my review of the Corsair K68 RGB. Does the $120 price point entice you to give an IP-rated keyboard a try? Do you think the spill resistance will come in handy for your gaming lifestyle? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, get subscribed so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos, and as always guys, thanks for watching.